but we didn't get in the Champions League, and I think the only other option here is and I thought this at the weekend. I don't think this will happen at all. The only other option for us to have a really, really good summer where you get everyone that you want is that Ineos surprise everyone and just go balls out and go, fuck FFP, fuck PCR. We're prepared to take a hit if we have to. We're not going to finish in a particularly high position anyway. If we get a fine, we get a fine. If we get points deduction, we get a points deduction. City do whatever they want, we may as well just do it as well. Or maybe they have ways of structuring deals, which means we're not going to get in any trouble with that, and they just kick the can down the road like United have done for years. I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't get that vibe from Ineos at all in anything that they've done so far, that they're going to be what might be seen as irresponsible and just absolutely go for it. Or maybe there's sales of players that we are yet to kind of figure out as fans, that there's other players that might go that we're not aware of. I forgot about Garnacho actually. Garnacho would fetch you an extra 40 or 50 money, and that's clear profit. So I suppose that does add to the coffers. I wouldn't be overly surprised if Mainoo's moved on. And that adds you probably another 40 or 50 out. So I suppose maybe in that respect, perhaps we are able then to operate more prolifically than we would have been. Just on the striker situation, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of to backtrack a little bit because I've not had the chance to do as many videos as I would have liked recently. Delap was seen as the first choice striker that United wanted. I never wanted him. I'm not saying that because we're not getting him. I never wanted him. My impression of Delap from Ipswich is the guy is a bit of a knobhead. Now, he's one of them maybe that when he plays for you, you say, well, he's our knobhead. Like Alan Smith when he played for Leeds back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Hated him at Leeds, came to United, loved him. But you have to remember, Alan Smith came in. He's that type of profile of player as well, I think. Don't think he's ever going to score you 30 or 40 goals a season. But he's a bit of a bull. He gets himself about. He leaves his elbows in. He starts fighting in an empty room. But Alan Smith came into Man United I'm pretty sure in the same summer that Wayne Rooney came in, although Rooney came in a bit later or came in injured. So he came in with Rooney, Van Nistelrooy, Saha and Solskjaer, although Solskjaer was injured, was still at the club. Now, for a bit, because of injuries, Smith did have to lead the line at United, but he wasn't our main striker. Now, you put prime Alan Smith back then into this team now, he'd be a massive upgrade on what we've got. But would that be enough? Probably not. And he's far better than Delap in my opinion. So if it was a choice of Delap or nobody up front, I'd take Delap. But if it's a choice of Delap or Gyökeres, or Delap or I'm trying to think of anyone else who's out there, Sesko, then I'd maybe go Sesko. So if it's a choice between Delap and Mateta from Palace, I don't think there's a lot in it. But I'm not bothered about Delap going to Chelsea. My concern is it means we're not going to sign any striker, and that's why they're chasing after Mbeumo, and we've kept Fernandes, and we've got Cunha, and he might look at Xerxes, he might look at Højlund and say, right, we can make do with that. It's just not possible to make do with that. They're not good enough. We need a proper striker. We've needed a proper striker for 3 or 4 years. Since Ronaldo left, we've needed a proper striker. And that's what, 3 years ago. So it's a while since we've had a proper number 9 who can lead the line and do the things that Amorim wants a number 9 to do. We ain't got one. But Delap wasn't it for me. I'm not overly concerned that he's not joining us. My first thought when he was confirmed to be going to Chelsea was, well, hopefully what that means is that we're now going to go for, because we're going to have to go for a Gyökeres or a Sesko, as I say. Osman, I'm not sure about Osman. He gives me bad vibes. I'm not sure about his temperament, and I think he'd be on astronomical wages. It's not an Ineos signing. It wouldn't happen. Gyökeres is the one that I would want because Amorim's worked with him before and he knows him. And I think Amorim needs that type of player to come in that he knows like the back of his hand. Not comparable really, but Moyes got Fellaini in, and he wanted Leighton Baines. when you're a manager coming into a club, you want players who've played with you before, who you've played in your system. And Amorim in particular, because he has a very specific way of playing, I think needs at least one of them. Now there's a balance to be had. You don't want it to be like Ten Hag when you buy him all the players that he's worked with before, all the players that come in are players that he's worked with before who are or the same nationality as him or whatever. You don't want that. But in such a different way of playing, we need some players who can come and do it the Amorim way. As far as I'm aware, Mbeumo hasn't played under Amorim before. I'm pretty sure Cunha hasn't. So, like, there's two if we get them that haven't but fit his system. He needs that one. I think at least one that you say, right, you feel more at home now. You've got that character. You've got that person who leads the line like a Gyökeres, and it would make a big difference, I believe. And just on the profile of player we're starting, there's a big push this summer from the club that we're going to be looking at players that are Premier League proven. Now, I mentioned Ten Hag a moment ago. We went too Erik Ten Hag centric with him, and a lot of players he brought in then were players who had no Premier League experience, players he's had good experiences with before, or Dutch players that have played in the Dutch league, but have no experience of the English Premier League. And you don't want to go too far that way, but it's possible to go too far the other way as well. But let's just look into the distant past and then the recent past. Back in the day, for me, the best Manchester United team I ever watched was the 93-94 team. And I'm just going to go through the players that are relevant to this argument. Ferguson made a habit of going to the lesser lights of the English league and getting their best player and bringing them in. So let's look at that. Paul Parker came from QPR. Steve Bruce came from Norwich. Gary Pallister came from Middlesbrough. Dennis Irwin came from Oldham. Paul Ince came from West Ham. And Roy Keane came from Nottingham Forest. That's your back four and your two midfield players. Then obviously you've got sprinkling of foreign talent like Schmeichel, Kanchelskis, Cantona. You've got youth products like Giggsy, Lee Sharp. You've got Mark Hughes, obviously, was initially in the system, and then you've got kind of utility players, where you guess your Brian McClair, and at the time still Brian Robson was coming towards the end of his career there. Your Dion Dublin's, Mike Phelan, etc. But those six that I just mentioned are players who've come from, I guess Premier League proven players, or First Division proven players as it was back then in the case of some of those players. And you can't argue that worked really well, but that was a very, very different time. To bring it back to a more recent example, when Solskjaer was the manager in his first summer, I'm struggling to remember any other ones other than the three I'm going to mention, but I think there was more. In his first summer, he signed Harry Maguire, Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Dan James. And there was an emphasis on British players, English football proven, who get what it means, the culture of English football, get what it means probably to play for Man United. And there's a big emphasis on that. And it was celebrated and it was seen as a good thing. Now that's 2019. The summer of 2019, so 6 years ago. Wow. And it was only a year or two after that people were berating Harry Maguire. People were berating Wan-Bissaka. People were saying Dan James wasn't good enough. I really liked Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Really did. Thought he was well worth keeping, actually. Maguire's been through some tough times at United and come through, and Dan James wasn't good enough. But you can individualise it and look at each individual case, fine. But the general overview was these are not the quality of players Manchester United need. So it seems that when we get players that are Premier League proven, the quality isn't quite there. But we go overseas and we get these players who look, on the face of it, to have tons of qualities. They come in and maybe they don't quite have the right attitude, or it's not quite the right fit, or they're not good enough, or perhaps it's a bit of both. My criteria remains the same, and I've said it many times before. You've got to have quality to play for Man United, but you've got to have physical, mental, emotional, and psychological wherewithal to wear the shirt of Manchester United and to carry it. Bruno Fernandes is a classic example of that. He has all of that. How many other players have that in this team, at this club? And over the years, how many have had that? That's what we need. And in that case, if part of what helps that is that they've played in the Premier League before and the Premier League proven them, fine, that's great. But I'm not obsessed with it. It has to be a balance. For me, as I said at the start of the summer, we need a goalkeeper, a right wing back, at least one holding midfield player, at least one attacking midfield player and a striker. And I've said at least one twice there, so let's just say you need 2 in one of those positions. That's 5 or 6 players we need. We've got Cunha. That's all we've got right now. So people can get carried away about Mbeumo. People are celebrating it on some channels like we've got him. We haven't got him. He said that he would prefer to go to Man United. Whether we've got the finances to do that or not is anybody's guess. But even if you say, right, okay, we get him, there's 2. If you do that and you don't get a striker, there'll be improvements next season. But will those improvements be enough to see us shoot up the league as like we want to? I have to say I'm excited. I'm excited by those 2 signings because it's new faces, it's players who've got good records in the Premier League, it's players who probably, certainly in Cunha's case, fit the system better than what we've got at the moment, and it needs fresh legs. It needs people we can get behind, good age profile, not old but quite experienced. If we got those 2 players, great. There is so much more that we need to be competitive. The only way I can see us doing that is by selling Garnacho and Mainoo, I'd say, because that probably recoups you something along the line of 100 million quid, and that's probably what we need because we're not selling Bruno Fernandes. On Bruno Fernandes, a bit more detail. He's my favourite player, and it'd have been another. Let me put it this way. I don't get a lot of joy watching Man United. Haven't done for quite some time. There's moments, of course there is. But the players who have consistently gave me joy last season were Bruno Fernandes and Amad, the only 2. I took a great deal of pleasure in watching De Ligt and Mazraoui and a couple of the younger players coming through. But consistently, the 2 players that gave me the most joy were Bruno Fernandes and Amad, and it's Bruno more prolifically. If he went, I'm not saying we couldn't recover from that because you would bring in a lot of players hopefully you're bringing a lot of players because of the money it would give us. But he's the one character over the last 6-7 years that I've thought, yeah, he gets it. He's a Man United man. He understands. And I'd have been gutted to see him go for that reason. But it was a really weird one because in the same respect, I understood why it would make sense. I also would have had a problem with the reason we'd have to let him go. The reason we'd have to let him go is because we're skin and because the Glazers would be having a wet dream about £100 million for a 31-year-old, someone who's 31 in September. It made sense for him financially. He isn't probably going to get better as a player. So it's a mixed one, really. I'm never going to be unhappy that Bruno Fernandes is staying at Man United because he's our best player. And I think if you put better players around him, it could be really exciting. But it's a weird one. It is. It's a strange one. I'm not like cock a hoop that he's staying, and I would have been really sad if he'd have gone. So I think it's a real. You can have both things. You can be gutted that he's gone, but know it was the right thing to do, and you can be happy he's staying whilst questioning if it is the right thing to do. If that makes sense. So it's a bit of an odd one with Fernandes. And just to finish, the club went on a prostituting exercise, should I call it, marketing opportunity, if you want to call it that, last week. Travelling halfway across the world to do a post-season mini tour, which earned the club £8 million on the back of a shit season where the players are probably knackered as well and probably bereft after losing the Europa League final. Played 2 games, lost one, won one. But the bit that stood out to me, which I just think completely encapsulates and epitomises the fall of this football club is that they did an open top bus parade. Now, it's all part of the marketing, it's all part of the PR, it's all part of, people can say football's changed, modern day football, blah, blah, blah. It's utterly pathetic. Back in the day, we had people at this football club at board level, at management level, and at pitch level who would never in a million years have done that on a tour. And I'm talking about when we were champions. If we won the league, if we won the European Cup, you'd have a job to convince Ferguson to do an open top bus parade on a pre-season tour. Because those people were winners and had class and knew what it stood for to play for Manchester United or to be a part of Manchester United. We are becoming a parody of ourselves. We are becoming prime joke era Man City, where the gift that keeps giving. No awareness of what that appears like to others. No awareness of reading of the room. You know, this has been absolutely hideous this season. And you are basically prostituting yourselves for £8 million. And part of that is an open top bus parade. Absolutely disgusting. And I'd love to know what Sir Alex Ferguson thinks about this type of stuff. I really would. Horrible to see it, and maybe other people don't feel as strongly as I do about it, but I'm disgusted that that's the club that we have become. It's not okay. It's not okay. Okay, they're my thoughts for now. Nice one. Glazers out.